All right, our next speaker is Jon Oropeza, and the title of the talk is Isomorphic Business Logic, or how to convince even the most die-hard C# Java Rails on the backend boss that you need to run Node. Take it away.
Thank you. So this was going to be the title of my talk, actually, but after seeing how Lanyard dealt with my title, I thought I would just completely change the talk. So, no, just kidding. We're gonna hit isomorphic business logic. Which, thank you all for sticking around, because I was a little afraid that if I actually put that up as a submission, that I would just completely clear the room. People would be like, isomorphic business logic. That sounds like about the most boring thing I could possibly be learning about on a Monday morning. So cool. Thanks, everyone, for sticking around. Very brief about me. Over a decade in tech, mostly fintech and insurtech. Love Portland, Oregon here. Pretty much my free time, I hike, I hack, and I eat and I drink our excellent coffee here in Portland. In fact, if you're from out of town and you want to go hit up a coffee shop after my talk here, I'm totally down to go get a cup. For the last year, I've been working with this group. It's a post-acquisition startup. We were known as Precision Estimates, and so we were acquired by the Home Depot. And so for the last year, I have been building applications that end up being used in every Home Depot store in the country. And it's kind of a cool thing for me because I have only worked with really tiny startups, from I'm the only employee to there's a dozen of us and wow, we're getting awful big. And now I'm working for this giant corporation. And it's been a really learning experience. It seems that there are two types of post-acquisition startups. There are the type where the giant corporation buys the startup and then completely takes everything over and tells the startup what to do. And within a couple years, everything goes to hell. And then there's the other type, which is the giant corporation buys the startup and goes, whoa, you guys are really good at what you do, so we're going to stand over here, and you guys rock and roll and do your thing. And fortunately, that's the kind of startup that Quote Center is, and that's the kind of relationship we have with the Home Depot. So it's been really cool. What I wanted to share with you today is something that I've kind of glommed onto lately, which is sort of how to solve an age-old problem around business logic. And we do it with isomorphic JavaScript. And so in thinking about the talk I was going to give, I was like, well, I shouldn't just get up there and start talking about isomorphic JavaScript. I should try to define it, because I wasn't sure if somebody asked me to define it, I could do it in a concise sentence or two. And so what I wanted to do is take us all on a little journey here back in time. Who in the room was developing for the web back in 2004? Okay, cool. So in 2004, I was trying to remember, like, what was JavaScript programming in 2004? And all I could remember was form validation. We used JavaScript for form validation. Fun effects, like making the mouse have like a little bit of like trailing stars or rainbows or something. And page view counts. Can anyone else remember anything else we did with JavaScript before 2004? Yeah, I mean, a couple other things. I don't remember anybody who was like, yeah, I'm a JavaScript developer. That's what I do, and that's all I do, and I'm stoked with it. JavaScript was kind of like this second or third language that if you developed for the web, you were like expected to know it, but you were kind of like mostly copying and pasting scripts or just writing a few lines and going, oh, I don't really understand what I'm doing, but this makes the page do some magic, so it's cool. And in 2004, I remember explicitly that there were three apps that kind of changed my mind about JavaScript. And they were Google Maps, Gmail, and this other app that just kind of like took the web like by storm. Does anybody remember what like the hottest app in 2004 was? MySpace. Yeah, MySpace. I remember another one though, Flickr. Flickr slayed me, because if you remember, Flickr was using Ajax just about more extensively before any other app was. And so you'd be on Flickr, and you could go to a photo, and you could start typing tags, and a little suggestion would pop up and go, no, hey, you're spelling heavy metal wrong, like with 2 V's. Or when you would add a tag, the page wouldn't post back. You wouldn't have to go back to the server. You could just type a tag, hit enter, type another tag, hit enter, and they'd be added to the photo. I remember going to a conference in 2004, and everybody was talking about Flickr, and when we all went home, we all looked at our own apps and went, man, how can I add some Ajax to this app? Because that is so cool. And I was also trying to remember, like, what did the code look like back then? And from what I remember, this is pretty much it. Like, all of our blocks of code were wrapped in this, if the browser is IE, and then if that's true, let's use this API called XML HTTP request, which was just this random API dependency that we just kind of assumed was there. And but if you're not using IE, do it a completely different way, because IE doesn't support things the way that the rest of the world works. And that was JavaScript development as I remember it from 2004. And it was certainly not something that you would consider putting on a web server, let alone be interested in running or having any sort of business logic tied up in it. So I kind of like put together this timeline straight from my head of like, okay, what were the major milestones in JavaScript development? 2004 I feel like was about the Ajax revolution. jQuery came around 2007, 2008 I think it was, and then we all just became crazy jQuery hackers and started grabbing DOM elements really easily and manipulating them, and it was awesome. Looking back at some of the code, it wasn't so awesome, but yeah, it was fun. Feels like around 2010, 2011 is when the JavaScript framework revolution kind of started with Backbone, and then Ember and Angular followed that up pretty quickly. And then recently, of course, we have ECMAScript 2015, which has been another big step forward in front-end development. And the big trend that I think has happened over these 11 years is that the amount of logic we write in the front end has gone from like down here to like all the way off the top of the screen. Because you start off with just writing little page view counts, and by the time you get to the frameworks, you're actually building patterns that were reserved for the backend, MVC, into your front-end code. Interspersed with that timeline, of course, was Node. And so Node comes along. I think it was actually started around released in 2008, 2009, but it felt like to me it really started becoming popular in about 2011. And according to Google Trends, that's pretty close. I just wanted to pause to kind of let everyone absorb that chart. For as big as Ruby on Rails was when it first took off, Node has actually surpassed it on Google Trends. Who would have thought that? I know I wouldn't have guessed that. Nice. So I think that's really cool. And one of the things that Node allows us to do, of course, is to start thinking in terms of, well, we're writing all this logic in the front end. We could also write, we're also going to be writing logic in the back end, and some of it is going to be the same. And maybe we could even run some of the logic that we're running basically in these front end frameworks on the back end. Start thinking about frameworks, like Angular, and you've got a ton of logic in here that presents a challenge, really, because you are not only making a post or making a series of gets when you load a page. You're actually running all this logic just to know what gets or what posts you actually have to run to load the page. And so a couple of years ago, this idea of isomorphic JavaScript kind of like gets let loose into the Twitter sphere. And as near as I could trace, it came from this post by Airbnb, was like the original reference of isomorphic JavaScript. And the idea was, well, okay, we've got all these awesome new frameworks, but they're running a lot of logic in the front end, and it's hurting page load, it's hurting SEO, and it's basically letting the front end developers have all the fun. So what if we took some of that logic and actually ran it on the back end, and we're able to basically render our view engine on the back end, and instead of the front end having to run all this logic just to get to the point where it can start loading the page, what if we had our server side just spit out HTML? And so we get this idea that application logic can be run either by the server side or the client side. And it's a really awesome thing. I think in talking to people before the talk, I said, well, what do you understand isomorphic JavaScript to be? And each of them said, well, it's when you render the page on the server before it gets to the client. And I want to submit to you that that's not all that isomorphic JavaScript is. In fact, that server-side rendering is a subset of what isomorphic JavaScript can do, because isomorphic JavaScript means basically that it's code that you can execute either on the server side or the client side. And the fact that it's not just server-side rendering means there's possibilities for running other types of code, including business logic. What is business logic? So I said, okay, well, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to put up a slide that says business logic, and then I'm going to give everyone a concise definition of what business logic is. And it is, and I sat down to start writing, and I wrote a couple paragraphs, and I went, oh my goodness, I probably don't understand what business logic is, because I don't know about you, but if I can't define something in just a sentence or two, I probably don't understand it. So I went out to Wikipedia, and the Wikipedia entry is like 5 pages long. So I went, okay, I'm going to go look this up on Stack, Quora, and when I ran across questions about what business logic is on Stack Overflow and Quora, the top answer was usually 3 or 4 pages long. So I went, okay, I'm going to give up on trying to define business logic, and I'm going to show a metaphor and let someone smarter than me try to come up with a concise definition. Has anyone seen this? How to draw a horse. Drawing a horse, it's easy, even if you don't know how to draw. You just start off, a couple circles, a couple legs, draw the face in, nice happy face, put some hair on it, and then, just some small details. I would submit to you that a way of thinking of business logic is to separate it from the CRUD parts of your app. That the CRUD parts, the create, the read, the update, delete, is all the first 4 steps, and the business logic is the small details that gets you to the horse. So from a metaphor, let's go on to an example. Let's say you are running a commerce app, a store app, and your app has 3 layers, client layer, server layer, and a persistence layer. And because it's summertime in Portland, you're going to start your store off by selling barbecues and a patio chair. So the way your app works is on the client side, when a user lands on a page, the client says, hey, show me all the grills. And the server side either uses the ORM or it writes a SQL statement, and the persistence engine comes back with a collection of grills. And the server side says, oh, cool, I've got a collection of products. I'm going to ship those off to the client. And the client says, hey, here are 2 grills. And man, that's so easy. Building apps for the web is awesome, and it's easy. This is the way like every example of like a new framework that I play with kind of like seems to start off. And I don't know about you, but whenever I start off an application and it's really simple like that, I feel like, man, this time it's going to be different. This is going to be so easy and simple and straightforward and readable and maintainable. It's just going to be awesome. Of course, that's not the real world. I basically have just drawn the outline, or the circle horse. The real world, a user doesn't care how many barbecues I have. They care about the grills that can be shipped to their place by Friday, because the party's on Saturday, man. So, okay, in my application on the server side, I run the same SQL query, and we bring back the same products from persistence, but now I have to run some extra logic. And I'm going to submit that this is business logic, that if I'm basically taking a user context in this example and saying, what area does this person live in, and then is the product available here, that those functions are business logic. And to come back with, hey, this is the one grill that I could get to you by Friday, that's the magic of the app, right? Because your user doesn't care how many barbecues your store sells. They care about the one that they could get to their house on Friday, right? So there once was an app, and that app is the Home Depot application, the Home Depot website. And so when you arrive at the Home Depot app, in a simplified view, we could say that the client side, when we do a search for gas grills, the client says, show me the top gas grills. And the server side says, oh, hey, cool, I'll just run that through my search algorithm. And I'm going to take those results and apply some logic, like do we have them in stock at a store near you? And could we potentially get them to your house? And I'm going to return those models. And the client goes ahead and renders the gas grills that are available, and everything's awesome. Now, let's say we're in that scenario and that's our application, and we, of course, as the developer, have stakeholders that we work with. And some of the stakeholders are the business. And the business says, hey, you know, we actually, in order to compete on volume, we actually need to offer people special prices if they buy like more than one or two things. And so being a smart developer, we say, okay, cool, I'm going to build some business logic in on my server side. I'm going to contain it there so that any client, the mobile application team can use it and my web app can use it. And it's going to be awesome. And that's going to be where the logic to make that determination of the bulk buys is going to live. Well, of course, the business isn't the only stakeholder in the application. We also have the designers. And they say, whoa, hey, the app needs to be performant. The user needs instant feedback on their pricing. They don't want to like be typing in like 100 and for every like keystroke have to make it like a server request to get the answer back. They want to know what the price is going to be right away. So we go, okay, fine. Okay, I'll put the business logic on the client side because that way it'll be fast. Awesome. That's what I'm going to do. And then, of course, the security-minded folks come along, and they're also stakeholders in this. And they say, whoa, we can't do that because you don't want to trust the client. I mean, dude, that's like totally vulnerable, and someone could spoof your application and say, give me 100 grills for $5 each. Okay, fine. I'll put the business logic on both layers. The ultimate compromise, right? So, this situation. Node, this is from W3 Techs. I make no claim to their accuracy, but it appears that Node has about 20% of the market share for back-end web servers. So that's totally awesome. Woo, Node. Of course, that also means that 80% of us are running some other technology on our back-end. Java, C#, Ruby, Python, and Django. And so the Home Depot Quote Center, which is the group that I've been working with a couple years ago, they were in this situation, which I think is pretty common, especially in the Northwest, where we seem to have this fascination for Microsoft's .NET technology. We have JavaScript on the front end and .NET on the back end. And so the aforementioned example was running, where we had the business logic implemented on both layers, one in JavaScript and one in C#. And so long as we were on the happy path, which was like 99-point-something% of the transactions, it was pretty straightforward. The client would say, let me order this barbecue for $2.19, and we'd run the business logic on the front end, and the server would go to confirm the price, and would run the business logic on the back end, and come to the same price, and we would end up making money. Woo! That didn't happen every time, though. So sometimes we had the bad path, which is, hey, the client says, whoo, let's fly through the sleds. The client says, let's order this grill for $219. And the server side would come back with a different price. Ooh. What do we think is the probable cause of this? Probably there's a difference in the business logic. Maybe a difference in between a number and a decimal in C#. Maybe just one piece of logic was updated and the other piece wasn't, or they're updated two different ways. I would submit that the core cause of this is because we're trying to implement the same logic in two different languages, which might be a new definition of insanity. Who else has encountered this insanity? I see a few folks out there laughing. Cool, it's not just me. Awesome. So The reality is actually even worse than this, because in most shops where you have, let's say, .NET on the back end, you have some other technologies in play, and if you have a couple of database folks, they might start implementing some logic in stored procedures, and now you have your logic in 3 different languages. The solution. So here's the solution. You basically take whatever other technologies you've got on the back end, and you throw them away. Done. That's it. Yeah, right. Okay. So that's probably never going to happen in most large shops. The realistic solution is to do this, is to throw up an API layer above your services. This is what our stack looks like today at the Home Depot Quote Center. We're building with React and Redux on the front end. It's awesome, and the subject of another talk. We've been implementing a microservices-based backend, and so the microservices may be written in .NET, they may be written in JavaScript using Node, and we have an API layer that uses Node. And so this gives us the opportunity to run business logic that we develop on the client and on the server side. And the result of this is that because you're running the same exact code to implement the same logic, you get the same answer every single time. And it is a thing of beauty. And the technologies that enable this is why I'm so excited to be developing for the web today. The technologies that enable this, I feel like, are all just like coming together right now with NPM, with Webpack, and with the new ES 2015 spec. So basically what we do in our technology stack is that we write like this. So we have client-side repos, and we have at least one API repo, and we have our business logic repos. And we use NPM to tie it all together by basically importing from the business logic repositories, either in our front end or our back end code. And on the front end, we use Webpack to bundle all of the code together. And on the back end, we use the new ES 2015 module syntax, which, if you haven't used it yet, is completely awesome. You don't ever have to worry about AMD or CommonJS ever again. It's like, the best thing ever. I'm going to confess, I never really fully understood AMD or CommonJS. I just lived with them and suffered through the whole thing of having to have 2 different versions of my code. But now is like the perfect time to do this. And when your stack looks like this, you can actually sleep at night knowing that 100% of your transactions are going to be run using the same logic on the front end and the back end, and you're not going to be woken up at 4 in the morning by someone on the East Coast in a store in Philadelphia saying, hey, why can't I buy this barbecue for $220? And that's why you need to run a Node instance in your stack. And that's it. I don't know if anybody has any questions or, yeah.
So how do you convince the other stakeholders that you want to add another layer? Because it seems like I feel like you might encounter some resistance. Like it might be a little bit extra complexity if the language is different than like C# or even Node. How do you go about it?
Yeah, absolutely. The question was, how do you go about convincing the other stakeholders? I would submit to put together a presentation like this. Change making starts with awareness. So just making people aware of the problem and the fact that there is actually a solution out there, I think, is the first step.